What's up, everyone? It's your favorite marketer and podcast host. My name is Prit. I'm the author of Zero to Four Figures, a marketing strategy consultant, and a digital entrepreneur. Few of the roles that I do take on, I'm a podcaster, YouTuber, Etsy shop owner, and a Skillshare teacher as well. All of the links are in the description box below if you would like to check it out. On this podcast, I shuffle between giving solo podcast episodes and bringing in experts to give you actionable steps on various marketing business mindset strategies to help you grow the business you love. Today, I have one such expert with me, Linda Healer. Linda Healer is a life/executive coach and the host of the Normalized podcast, which is ranked in the top 5% globally. Linda works with clients to uncover and shift the stories, in brackets, lies that the voice in our head says are true. On her podcast, Linda and guests explore societal and cultural lies we are born into that have become normalized. Linda lives in a small town south of Rochester, New York, and is married to her high school sweetheart for over 30 years. She has two amazing adult children, an equally impressive son and daughter-in-law, an adorable 4-year-old grandson with two more on the way, and two beloved fur babies. Linda, how are we doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great, Prit. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, that's such a sweet bio. And, it's really nice that you not only talk about your children, but you also bring up your daughter-in-law and your son-in-law. And I think that's just such an indication of how close you are as a family. That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes. And that's, what I always wonder, should I put my personal stuff into my bio and how much should I put? And it's like, that's a big part of who I am, is my family and being a mom and now a grandma. So it's like, yeah, you know what? I guess people are just gonna have to take me for who I am, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. And of course, in today's podcast episode, we're going to be talking about exactly what Linda interviews her guests about. So today I will be interviewing Linda about, the different stories that we tell ourselves, the lies that we tell ourselves, the lies that we're conditioned to believe. And how do we get out of that mindset? How do we come to a point where everything that we're talking to ourselves is the truth? So Linda, are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm going to let you run the show because I don't know where to go from here because that's a lot right
Yes,
there.
absolutely. But first, as I ask with all of my guests, Linda, can you share your life story with us? How did you start? Where did you start? And then I know that you were a dental hygienist too, and then you got into the
Yes.
entrepreneurial journey. So let's hear about that. Let's hear about how you got started with all of that and your entrepreneurial journey as well.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So my life story, holy cow. Wait. How
Take
much
your
time do you
time.
have? I was
Take your
going to
time.
say.
I just said it. Please take your time, Linda. Don't worry.
Okay. Well, yes, as you said, I was a dental hygienist for many years, but it wasn't my passion. But I also knew I wanted to go to college when I got out of high school because I wanted to be able to take care of myself. I mean, you said in the bio, I married my high school sweetheart, but I didn't want to have him be one who had to take care of me. So if anything happened to him, I wanted to be able to take care of myself. And so, and also we didn't have a lot of money. So I went to a local community college and got my degree in dental hygiene. And it was a really good job. I was able to make full-time money. And then when my kids came along, I was able to take a couple of years off. And then when they were a little bit older, said to my husband, I need to go to work, even if it's one day a week, because this stay-at-home mom thing is hard. And I will tell you, I want to say to those stay-at-home moms out there, anybody listening, my hats are off to you. That is the hardest job in the world. It is very rewarding, but it is very hard. So I said to my husband, I got to go back to work at least one day a week. And so I did. And, gradually worked up as the kids got older, 1, 2, 3 days a week. But I never went back full time because I thought it was important for one of us to be there for the kids. But dental hygiene was not my passion. And so I was constantly looking for what it was that I was meant to do. And at one point I had gone back to school to be a teacher. I was like, yeah, that's not it. And then when my daughter was getting ready to graduate from high school, I realized that I kind of had a secret that nobody really knew. And that was how terrified I was of the world, and especially of people. I had a lot of social anxiety, even to the point where, and you won't remember this, but maybe some of your audience, there was a time when, before cell phones, before even answering machines, where the phone would ring and I was terrified to even answer the phone, because I didn't know, there was no caller ID. I didn't know who was calling. And what if they asked me something that I didn't know the answer to? I had so much anxiety and fear that that just terrified me. And so, and I remember at times my husband, like, the phone would be ringing and he's like, honey, are you going to get that? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know who it is. I don't. And it was a little crazy. And think about that. So if I was afraid to answer the phone, it was terrifying for me to walk into a room of people, whether I knew them or not. And I just had that social anxiety. So back in 2008, I was watching Oprah. I was a huge Oprah fan, constantly doing personal development, trying to get over this fear. And she had that's when she started her book club, and she was reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And I loved that book. And I thought, I want to talk about this. But again, because I was so afraid, I didn't really have any close friends. So I found a book group here in my local area. I live in a more rural area, and Rochester is about 20-30 minutes away. And it's the big city. And I wouldn't drive up there by myself. So I actually talked a friend of mine who was a coworker at the time, if she would ride with me to that meeting. And she said, yes, I'll go with you. And I went and I met this amazing group of people, and I stayed in that book group for 2 years. And the facilitator of the meeting, of the book group, was a life coach. And one day, after about 6 months of being in the book group, I finally had enough courage to ask him, hey, what do you do as a coach? And he started telling me, he's like, hey, people don't have the tools to step outside their comfort zone, and I partner with them, and all of that. I'm like, that's what I need, and that's what I've been looking to do. Because I had gone back to school to be a therapist and I hated it. It's like, I don't want to go into all the dark past and all of that. I want to pick up from there, and how do we move forward? And so then I hired a coach and worked with him for a while. And I told him, because coaching is all about, where do you want to be in the future? And I told him, I said, I think I want to do what you do, but that's why I'm working with you first, to see if it is what I want to do. And so within probably a month and a half, I said to him, I go, yep, this is what I want to do. And he said, okay, you can just print out a card and say you're a coach, because there are no state or federal regulations on coaching. And I said, absolutely not. Number one, I'm terrified. I still had the fear, even though I was working with a coach. I said, I want training. And so he sent me to the International Coaching Federation website, and I did some research. And in 2009, I started a coach training program, and I flew to New York City one weekend every month for a year for this program. Now think about this. This is me, who wouldn't answer the phone if I didn't know who was on the other line, wouldn't drive, 20 minutes to Rochester. But here, I wanted this so badly. I wanted to help other people, but honestly, Prit, it was mainly about me helping myself, because I knew the only person standing in the way was me. And again, this comes back to those lies in my head. I had all of these lies about who I was and who I wasn't. I had all of these negative thought patterns and limiting beliefs that I had created as a kid. And I was filtering my life through that. And so that's what coaching, and I'm a big proponent of therapy too. So I went through therapy. Therapy was great. And my therapist was like, you're good to go. And I kept going back, and he's like, but you're good. You've healed the past, forgiven your parents, done all of that sort of stuff. And I said, yeah, but I still have the fear. And so that's why I love therapy for healing those wounds of the past. And then coaching picks up where therapy leaves off. And it has been a game changer for me. And so now my mission is to educate people about what coaching is, and to also have them start questioning those lies, those thoughts that voice in their head is telling them, because they're not true. So I just did a lot of talking there.
Oh, don't worry about it, Linda. That was really, really powerful and so inspiring. I mean, from someone who, couldn't even pick up the phone today, I'm pretty sure you're on the phone a lot, and you're
Yes.
talking to people, and you're
Yeah.
changing lives. And I like the fact that you said you did this for yourself. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, it really boils down to that. You've got to have that desire to change your life for the better, for you to actually take that step and continue on that path as well. And I find that so inspiring about you. So thank you for sharing that. And let's talk a little bit about, the lies that we tell ourselves, or the stories that we're telling ourselves. One question that I would want to ask you is, how do we recognize that whatever we're telling ourselves is a lie, or that it's a narrative that we need to change? How do we recognize that?
Wow, it's difficult. It can be difficult because we have beliefs. We have beliefs, and we grow up with these beliefs, and we don't question them. And so I had a colleague, I can't even remember. So we call them, in the coaching world, we call them contexts. And those are basically the interpretation that's driving the narrative in our head. And so one of them can be, we can filter our life through an either or context. So if we see the world and like black and white, so it's this or that, it's either this or that. So that can filter our life. And so let's say that, I want, I can't even think of an example right now, but it's what if I have two good things? Okay. So say I want to go on a trip to, Alaska. And I also, at the same time, I want to go to, a family birthday party, and they're happening at the same time. So it's either this or that. So how can shifting our mindset could be, okay, how can we create this as a both and? So instead of saying that's black and white, these are your two choices, it's like, okay, how can we create this as a both and? Well, you know what? I've already booked the trip to Alaska, so I can't really change that. But maybe I could, video chat from the ship to that party and say hello, or I could create a video or have something special delivered to that person. So it's not saying this or that, but creating it as a both and. And so, but the thing about it is, we're not always aware of those contexts that we're filtering our life through. And so that's why a friend or a coach, actually coach is better, because they're not connected emotionally usually to it, and they can be that mirror. And so, but I had a friend who was also a coach. We went through coach training together, my friend Ileana. And one day, and I can't even remember, I was working on shifting a context and I had it in my head. So I grew up with the thought that I can't have what I want. Everybody in the world can have what they want, but me. And I'll never forget, she was like, and I was like adamant that that is true. That is absolutely true. And she said to me, she said, what would you do? Would you be willing? She said, would you be willing to just doubt that belief? So she didn't say, oh, no, it's not true, because I'm going to push against it and say, yes, it is true, because my survival mechanism, my saboteurs are going to push back and say, no, this is true. But she said, would you just be willing to doubt that belief? And in that moment, in my mind's eye, I could see little cracks in that belief. And in that moment, it was like, oh, okay, so what if I did doubt that? Is it really true? And that was a turning point for me, because then there were little cracks and there were little holes, little light shining through, going, ooh, you know what? Maybe that isn't true. Let's just try that on for a little while. What would be possible? And what is it? What's the payoff? So I want to say this too. So with context, with that context of I can't have what I want, I realized what it was costing me, right? I mean, if I can't have what I want, then everything that I do it's not going to succeed if I live my life from that thought. However, if I think about it, we don't do, as human beings, we don't do anything without getting a payoff. So it's clear on the cost, but what do I get from holding on to that context of I can't have what I want? And what I had to be honest with myself is say, okay, if I hold on to this, then that means that I don't have to require anything from me. And, yeah, I'm going to fail. Obviously, with that in place, I'm going to totally fail. But you know what? People will expect that more than they will expect me to succeed. And if I succeed, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to handle that success? Because that's unusual. I'm used to failing. But what about success? I don't know what that looks like. And can I handle that? So I was getting something. I had permission to play small, and I had permission to fail. And so, and that was, and it sounds crazy, but I could wrap myself in that warm blanket of nobody will expect anything of me. I don't have to expect anything of myself. So I can play small and complain and just be the victim and say, well, I can't have what I want anyway. Everybody else can succeed, but I can't. And so I had to come to grips with that and say, is that how I want to live my life? And then do the hard work of shifting from that victim mentality.
I think we've talked about so many important things here right now in the last few minutes, because there are so many important things that you've talked about. For me, it really resonated because for a very long time in my life, I kept telling myself that nothing ever goes my way. And it's quite similar to yours. And I realized for me, it was more of a coping mechanism to deal with the down. So every time there was a down, that was my way of protecting myself and saying, oh, okay, well, nothing ever goes my way. So it's okay that this happened, and I don't have to feel bad, or I think I was saving myself from the pain. And it's only in the last 3 years where I identified that and I said, Britt, I think you need to take a step back and see if it's actually true. And that's something that you mentioned too, is it really true? Or is it just something that you're telling yourself because you want to feel better, because it's just a blanket that you put over yourself to feel comfortable? And I think a lot of times, especially, for me, even now, even to this day, when I'm having like a self-actualization thought, the thought that comes in my head is, oh crap, is it time for me to take action? And I think that scares us, it scares us from taking action. And I think that's one more aspect where you said the blanket really helps you. It creates that victim mentality because you're scared of taking the step. And so when you are in that mindset, Linda, how do you get out of that? How do you get out of the blanket? Because the blanket is really, really comfy. It's so, so nice, and you just want to stay in there forever. So one, how do you, I guess, tell yourself that it's time to get out of it? And how do you actually take the steps to start working on these lies and shifting the stories in our head?
Yeah. So number one is yes, every time we're going to level up, level up or peel off another layer of what we call your survival mechanism. So that survival mechanism was created to help keep us safe, but it keeps us stuck inside of our comfort zone. So even though it's what we know, it's miserable. And so every time we go to step outside our comfort zone and stretch that, that's where breakdowns happen. And as a coach, I remember thinking when I was in training, the saying was learn to expect and welcome breakdowns. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, who would ever want a breakdown? But that's where we know that there's going to be growth. Okay, because we get uncomfortable. We're pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zone. And so when your question to ask, what do we do when we find ourselves in one of those breakdowns, is number one, just accept it. Because if you push it away, push it down, again, Debbie Ford said, what we resist persists. So if we try and push it away or push it down or ignore it, it's just going to stay there. And just go, okay, I'm in it. Like, I am in it up to my eyeballs, and I just want to curl up in bed and just be with it. And you know what? That's okay. That's okay. If that's what you want to do, you have to be able to express that upset. What are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What are the body sensations going on? Really connect with it, but do it in a way that is healthy. Okay. And the reason I say that is, pick somebody, and I do this with clients. So we have an exercise that we do when a client, and I will, to take a little bit of an aside, is I tell clients this is going to happen, because we're going to get you moving. You're going to be doing things, and you're going to have a breakdown. And guess what? If you're moving, and you're going to have these for the rest of your life. So we're going to teach you some skills and tools to get through this as you keep growing. And so if they don't call me upset, and then I know we're not pushing them hard enough. There's this delicate balance of, okay, are we pushing you hard enough or too hard? Where is that gradient? And so so the first thing is identify the breakdown. What's going on? What is going on? And what shouldn't be happening right now? Because this shouldn't be happening to me right now. Then express what is going on. Again, like I said, what are the thoughts? What are the feelings? What's going on in your body? And then say that out loud to someone. Pick someone safe. But what I want people to be aware of is, because I had someone say to me, come to me, they knew I was a coach, and we were at a networking, and they're all upset, and they're telling me all this stuff. And I just, was sounding board for them, let them, yeah, wow, that was, sounds bad. Is everything, how are you feeling now? And I said to him, I go, okay, so now you got everything unloaded. How are you feeling now? Well, I feel good, but, I just told my friend Sue this, and I'm meeting, Jill later out for drinks. So I'm going to share this with her too. And I said to her, and I had a relationship that I could say to her, I go, I get that you want to process this. I said, however, there comes a line where it's basically just gossip. If you're talking about somebody else and you're venting, or you're just like verbally vomiting your upset all over other people. And, that's not really a great thing to do either. And if you have a pattern of doing that with your friends and you find that your friends are kind of, leaving you or not wanting that, that might be a pattern you might want to check on. So my suggestion is to choose one person and it's got to be somebody who can hold the space for you, especially if you're upset about something at work, and not go, yeah, they're awful, and get down into the muck and the mire with you. You want them to just hold the space so that you can get that out, so that you can then move on. Once you get all that energy out, then you just focus on what really are the facts in this case. So what's going on here in this breakdown? The facts, not your feelings. If you're still stuck in the feelings, go back and do those. But what are the facts in this case? And then once you get just the facts, then what are you committed to? Think about the next step is, what am I committed to in this instance? And I had a client call, and she was, we got through all the upset, we got through the facts, and then she got to the commitment. And it was like, what are you committed to? And she's like, I'm committed to making this work. I'm committed to coming out on the other side of this breakdown, healthy, whole, happy, with relationships intact. And it's like, okay, that's your commitment. Then we go to actions. Okay, what are the next right actions to do? What's the next right thing to do in front of your nose that, based on your commitment, not the upset, but based on the commitment that you have, what are the next right actions to take? So that's kind of an exercise in a nutshell of what I do with a client when they show up in their in breakdown. And I use that too. I use it too. I can do it like a little shorthanded version now because I'm, been doing this for 12 years now, but it's really helpful. It's really helpful.
I love it. I love that you say that this process does involve a breakdown, because when I think about the times that I have had to rewire my mindset or the thoughts or the lies that I've been telling myself, there was a lot of anger and, frustration, because it's a lot of feelings that get dredged up because, one, maybe these are the lies that other people have been telling you and you have a lot of anger. Then you have a lot of anger towards yourself for believing it and for acting in a way that was detrimental to your emotional and mental health and physical health, of course. And so I think it's important that you mentioned that it's validating to feel all of those things. It's important that you actually process it. But I also understand when you say you've got to take a look at the facts. At some point, yes, you've acknowledged your feelings, but the facts are also important. And understanding what was stemming it, what was the thought process behind it, what was the actual situation, and all of those things. So I really like that you said there is going to be a breakdown, and heads up, it's going to happen. But the fact that you also have a framework to help us navigate through that breakdown, I think is also really, really important, because a lot of people gloss over the emotional struggle it actually has on us when we are trying to remove these stories and lies. And fundamentally, I think that's also one of the reasons why we don't want to get into it. We're afraid of the breakdown. And so what do you have to say for people who are afraid of the breakdown? And for me, when I had those breakdowns, the things that I had breakdowns about were too personal for me to talk to with anyone. And I didn't feel safe enough to talk to anyone. So if we have to do, I think I have two questions at this point. One, how do we mentally and emotionally prepare ourselves for the breakdown? And number two, what happens if maybe the situations were so traumatic that we don't feel comfortable sharing it with anyone? How can we be a support to ourselves at that point?
Wow. Yeah, those are key questions. So, number one, I think mentally and emotionally preparing ourselves, that's a everyone's going to be different. And I think that mentally and emotionally, I think we have to, like what you just said, is say, well, okay, I'm going to go back. So I think, again, if we talk about lies of our society, for some reason, I think we have a tendency to believe that life should be all rainbows and unicorns, that there should be no negative, everything should be happy and light and, Disney World, right? The Disney, that's not life. That is not real. So again, we go back to expect and welcome breakdowns, because on the other side of it, though, there is something amazing, because as we grow, we learn that everything that happens to us can be converted into a gift and opportunity. So what did we learn from that breakdown? And how has it made me a better person, a stronger person, a more loving person? What is the gift, or what is the opportunity in that? So I think that is something to be aware of. Now, I'm not saying there are some things that happen, some really huge things that are really bad. The loss of someone you love, that I'm not saying you should turn right around and let's see if we can find, the gift and opportunity in that. That's not what I'm saying. It's just the day-to-day breakdowns. If we can get to the point where, instead of like, oh, this is good, oh, this is bad, oh, this is good, oh, this is bad, it's like, okay, this is not feeling real great. I'm going to feel my feelings, but okay, how can we turn this around? So you have more of that inner peace, more of that that inner peace, basically, and joy, that that whatever the universe throws at you, you're going to be able to handle it. And I think that also speaks to the second piece of supporting ourselves. That mindset is going to help us support ourselves, because then we're going to know that we can handle whatever's been thrown at us. And I think that that's important too, is to take stock of how far we've come. If you look back, Prit, and you've talked about this before too, you look back 3 years where you were and now where you are now. I look back when I was, back in my 40s, where I was and where I am now. It's not predictable that you would be where you are and I would be where I am. So I can go, whoa, look at what we've accomplished. And you know what? I can do this. But I also want to say too that it kind of makes me sad, but it also raises a red flag when you say there's no one I can talk to. And I know that there are people out there that feel that same way. And I want to encourage people that even if it's not a friend or a family member, if you can find a professional for you to talk to, that is so important, because, our thinking can get skewed, and we need each other to bounce things off of and say, look, I am really sad now. I'm depressed. I'm not feeling good. This is what's going on in my head. And to have especially a professional say, I hear you. You're not alone. And let's figure this out together. I think that is really, really important. And I hope that anybody listening to this, I am not a professional therapist. However, I've been trained to know what is a therapy issue and what is a coaching issue. And so if you just need someone to talk to, please reach out. I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. I don't want anyone to feel like they are alone. And again, I have confidentiality with all of my clients, with any prospects, with any conversations that I have. Number one is confidentiality. The only time that it wouldn't be confidential is if I hear someone threatening themselves or someone else. Then I would definitely, they have like 5 seconds to convince me that they're not going to do that. And, then if they insist on carrying that on, I hang up the phone and call 911. So anyway,
Yeah.
but I just want people to know you're not alone. There are people out there. As Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. There are helpers out there who want to help you through.
100%, Linda. I agree with everything you said, because when I first started out, with the whole breakdowns and all of those things, it was really, really hard for me. And for me, my life has been very, very traumatic. There's been like childhood trauma, and then there's been complex trauma that I've been through. And so for me, I didn't feel safe during these breakdowns. And I didn't think that, I think it was more than not feeling safe. I just didn't think that anyone would understand. And it was only after I, of course, did thorough investigations, and I literally went into each person out there, each licensed therapist, and then figured out, okay, have they been through the same thing? It was only when I reached that level of comfort that I actually found someone who had been through the same thing, and then I was able to share. But I do also want to put it out there that sometimes, yes, because I'm speaking from my own personal experience, that at some point you're going to feel very lonely. You're going to feel that nobody understands. You're going to feel that it is too traumatic, and you're worried about how other people are going to think about you. And as Linda said, always ask for help. Like, even if you don't have the courage to overcome what it is that you're going through, I highly, highly recommend just finding the courage to ask for help, ask for professional help. And it has changed my life for the better. I will always advocate for it. And I'm so glad that Linda also brought this up and talked that none of us are actually alone. There are people out there who are willing to listen to you, and even if you don't find that safe space with the people around you, there is always professional help. You just have to be intentional about the help that you are asking for, and it will be given to you. Of course, you will find it. So thank you, Linda, for bringing that up. Do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to tell my listeners as we wrap up this entire episode? Any takeaways that you think they should have?
Well, I want to go back briefly
Sure.
from the beginning, when I love how you pulled out that I said that I did this for myself,
Yes.
like this personal development. And what I was thinking at that time was, but when I started out, I was, I've got to fix everybody else. So years ago, it was, I have to fix everybody else. I can't focus on me, because then it would be selfish. This can't be about me, because I'm not selfish. And what I've come to realize over the years is that it's not selfish to take care of ourselves and to be on this journey of self-discovery and personal development, because it's a ripple effect. Just like Gandhi said, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. So I was constantly out there. Well, if I can make them happy, that people pleasing, and I'm going to change you and do what I can for you, because then, that'll make me happy. It didn't work. It doesn't work. It does not work. So we need to focus on ourselves and trust ourselves that we know the line between taking care of ourselves and being selfish. There is selfish out there. There is it. And sometimes we have to say, you know what, I am going to be a little selfish here, and I need this extra time, away from the kids for a couple of hours. But that's not really selfish if you're taking care of yourself. Now, if you're doing that to the detriment of other people, then I would probably call it selfish if it's impacting negatively on other people. But again, and I think, again, women have this notion that if they take care of themselves, they're being selfish. And I say to that, then be a little selfish.
Yes.
Yeah. And trust yourself. that you will know where that line is between being detrimentally selfish and being selfish enough to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. I was actually just going to mention that I feel like it's a very integral conditioning of a woman that from the beginning, from when we are born, it's always about serve other people, or you were on this earth for someone else. You were not on this earth for yourself, you know. And then when you later, as you grow up, it's your siblings or your parents or your in-laws or your husband or your kids. And I think in that entire journey, the lies that we tell ourselves is that we've got to put other people first, and we can never be the first, or we can never show ourselves that kind of love or attention ever. And yeah, that's also one of the lies that I personally had to overcome myself. It was a very, very hard struggle just because of how strong the conditioning is. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that's a very, very real struggle that a lot of people have. Because I've been asked this question, well, isn't self-love selfish? And I never had an answer for that. And today I do, because of you, Linda. And the next time someone asks me that question, I'm going to say, well, self-love is not detrimental to other people. When it starts being detrimental, that is selfish. And I'm going to literally say your lines and say, you've got to know where the line is. And up until that line, it is self-love. And thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for coming on my podcast, sharing your valuable insights. I'm very sure that my listeners are going to be taking some time to think about the lies that are stopping them from unlocking their potential. I myself am definitely going into retrospect mood and go into deep thinking about everything that we've talked about in this episode. So thank you so much, Linda. If any one of my listeners want to find you or reach out to you for help, either professional or just talk to you and tell you something they liked about this episode, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah, they can email me, Linda at normal-lies.com. I'm on LinkedIn. You can connect with me there. I'm on Instagram. I'm most active on LinkedIn. And just, send me a note. Say if you want to connect there, just say that you heard me on Prit's podcast. But yeah, feel free to reach out, and I would love to have a conversation. And thank you, Prit, so much for this. I'm so happy that at your age, you're getting this, like you get this, because it took me a long time to get this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. And of course, if any of you are listening up until here, thank you so much. Do reach out to Linda. Tell her one thing that you liked about this podcast episode, and I'm sure you guys are going to have a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. I hope you're staying safe, staying healthy. I will catch you in my next episode. Bye-bye.